All right, so you've done all the work training for your ultra marathon, and whether you have a 50K, 50 miler, 100 miler, or 200 miler, or even more, there's something that you have to do before a race to make sure that you are 100% ready because training doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a successful race out there. What does guarantee that you have a successful race is training well, but also taking the time to prepare all the necessary tools, items, gear, checklists, everything that you need to go through to have the best race ever. And what we're going to go through today on this video is a pre-race checklist of all the things that you need to prepare in order to be not only well prepared for your next ultra marathon, but how to have everything in place so you can set yourself up for a great race. Look at that. That was a nice little rhyme there. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. So we're going to go through the 6 things that you need to go through and nail down in your pre-race strategy before you go into a race so you can be fully prepared. Now, for me, I am about 3 weeks away from the Kodiak 100 miler. So these are all the things that I'm doing in the last few weeks leading into Kodiak. Even though we're going to go through and show you the things that I'm doing for the prep for my 100-mile race, you can take these same exact tips going into whatever distance and whatever race you're training for as well. But it's super important to go through these 6 things so you can be ultimately successful. And I always say this too, someone told me this quote and it always sticks with me, is that if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And I think in ultra marathons where you have so many time out there and so much different variables such as nutrition, hydration, and weather and gear and a bunch of different things as well too, if you don't have a plan in place, then the chances of you not executing well and not being well adapted to the situation at hand are going to lead to potential catastrophe. There are many times where I've seen people go into ultra marathons without a plan and without doing these steps, and there's something along the way where a big snag like this can hinder the person from their goals, or even worse, cause a DNF or a did not finish. So these are the 6 things that we go through with all of our athletes here at Everyday Ultra. These are the 6 things that I go through myself preparing for an ultra marathon. And ultimately, here are 6 things that you can do, that you need to do, I should say, that's going to help you crush your next ultra marathon. So the first thing, and I would say this is one of the most important things, and I will say why in a second, because you might hear this and be like, what? Like, how is this the most important thing? Is you need to go through and make a pace plan for your race that you have coming up. Now, what I mean by a pace plan is basically you're going to put out your entire race. You're going to look at the aid stations that are in the race that you are racing. You're going to estimate your time between each aid station, how long you're going to be out there, what times a day you're going to be out there, and you're going to make a chart based on this. Now, you might be saying, hey, Joe, I'm not worried about time. I'm just worried about finishing. Or, hey, I don't even know where to start with the time, which we'll talk about in a second. Here's the reason why this is important, regardless if you're going for an ultramarathon specific time or you're just trying to finish, is because everything ties back to how long you're going to be out there, right? In terms of what the nutrition is going to be, in terms of what gear you need to bring, right? If you're going to be at certain parts of the nighttime, if you're going to, need to have extra headlamps and things like that too, like you're going to have a plan that's in place based on the time, because once you have that, then all the other pieces that we're going to talk about in this video are going to make a lot more sense, and they're going to be easier to plan out the exact amounts and what you need in order to come up with your best plan ever. So how do you come up with your time goal? Because that's where you need to start from when you are pacing an ultramarathon. Well, the first thing is, if you already have a goal time, well, that is easy, right? Let's just say you want to run a sub 24-hour 100 miler. Then it's like, okay, great. I'll make my pace chart for a finish of 23 hours and 50 minutes or something like that. Or maybe you want to run a 12-hour 50 miler. Then you have 12 hours as your goal for the 50 miler. So if you have a goal time, this step's already easy. Now, it becomes a little more tricky when you don't have a goal time or you want to go finish. Not saying it's a bad thing at all, but you want to do a little bit of best guessing. And this comes a little bit more of a guessing game when you are in the position of a distance that you've never done before, right? Whether it's your first 50 miler, 50K, 100 miler, you're playing a little bit of a guessing game here. One of the things that I usually like to do for athletes when I'm kind of guessing this is, first and foremost, I like to look at which run in our plan is going to be the most specific to the race that we're training for, which means, like, let's just say, for example, you're training for a 100-mile race and there's 10,000 feet of gain. You want to look for a long run that has very similar terrain and a very similar elevation gain feet per mile average than that run. So the best run for a 100 miler that you're training for with 10,000 feet of gain would be a run that has about 100 feet of gain per mile, which what we're doing the math there is we're taking the elevation gain of the race, dividing it by the distance, which gives us our average elevation gain per mile. You want to find a long run that you've done in your training that is going to basically have that same amount. You're going to find one that has a similar terrain. So if you're doing a race that's very, very runnable, you want to look at something that's very runnable. Conversely, if there's something that's very technical, you want to take a technical run. And the third thing is one that's relatively closer to the race. So for example, if you are, let's just say you're for me, training for Kodiak 100 miler, and you did a long run last week, which is 4 weeks away from the race, and assuming that all those checks are in the box there, that is the run that you probably want to take on to use your estimate base point. Because the closer you are to the race, the more it's going to take into account your fitness, the more it's going to take into account the most recent data. And thirdly, you're probably a little bit more fatigued at the end of a training block. And that's actually a good kind of comparison to use when you're going into a bigger race, because you're going to be fatigued in the later parts of these races. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the next part is estimating, I would say, not only time, but your average pace, because that's an easier thing to extrapolate based on your long run data. So on the long run data, I always say that the longer the race, the more of a cushion that you want to add on to the pace that you're going to use as your base target. So I know it may have sounded a little confusing, so let's kind of back up. So let's just say the long run that you're using as an example basis had an average pace of about 12 minutes per mile. And if you are running a 50K, you might want to do 1 minute more than that pace to estimate your 50K. So for example, 12 minutes per mile is the time in that long run, is the pace in that long run. So we might estimate our 50K time to be 13 minutes per mile. And then we extrapolate the 50K time based on that finishing pace. If it's 50 miles, you might want to go for 2 minutes. If it's 100K, you might want to go for 3 minutes, and 100 miles, you might want to go for 4 minutes. Now, in general, I will say a lot of the times when I'm guessing for a lot of athletes who are racing first of these races, if I do take their long run pace, I actually go through that exact addition onto there. Now, is it perfect? No. Is it an exact science? No. But what I generally see through the data of all the athletes that we worked on, we've worked with, across all of our coaches, over 200 athletes at this point. And what we've seen is that a well-executed race for the first time of a distance, if you're doing a 50K, is likely going to be around a minute per mile slower than your kind of what we call most comparable long run that we've had on there. 50 miles, probably about 2 minutes or so. 100K is going to be about 3 minutes, and then 100 miles is going to be about 4 minutes. Now, can you go lower than that? Absolutely, 100%. Can you go higher than that? Yes, absolutely, 100%. But that's a good base estimate to have onto there too. So let's just go back to the example of the 100 mile kind of example that we've had on here. Let's just say that pace was 12 minutes per mile, and you're maybe running your first 100 miler. Then you might want to estimate your average finishing pace to be about maybe 16 minutes per mile, which is going to be 12 plus 4 equals 16, right? So something to kind of keep in mind in there. Now, once you have that pace target, you can go ahead and create your pace chart, which we will show you in a second here too. But let me just talk about an example from my standpoint. Now, from my standpoint for Kodiak, my goal is to place in the top 10. And the reason why I want to do that is because the top 10 gets an automatic entry into UTMB next year. Now, granted, the course this year is a little bit different. Secondly, this is a total side note. They have not released the course yet for Kodiak 100 miler, which is not the norm for races. It's 3 weeks. We don't even know what the course is. It's kind of nuts. They've given a little bit of details, though. They do say it's about 17,000 feet of gain. They do say where the trails generally are, and it looks like it's very similar to the course of what was ran in 2022. So I'm going to use that as a basis. But for 99% of you, if you're racing a race and you're 3 weeks out, you probably have the course. You should have the course. Race directors, please note that. But all that being said, you have the course, you have the goal. So my goal, right, if I'm basing a time off of this, what I'm doing is I'm looking at my long run paces on similar terrain, which has been about 11 to 12 minutes or so. Now, I am a little bit more experienced when it comes to racing 100 milers and 200 milers. This will be my sixth 100 mile race. And so this is a good caveat. If you are more experienced in the distance, then generally closer to parity of your long run pace is going to be to that goal race. So like for me, if I'm running 12 minutes per mile, then I can probably assume that maybe I'll be around 12 to 13 minutes per mile for the total pace for what I'm going to be having on a similar run as well too. So at that standpoint, that comes around to a 22-hour finish or so. And that based on the data of last year's Kodiak 100 miler, which had a little less elevation gain, a little less competitive, would have net you in the top 10. So I think that, 22 hours is where I'm going to base on, 21, 22 hours. So that's what I'm going to base it on. Now, once you have your pace goal, let's dive in and I'll show you a tool that you can use totally for free. You don't have to pay for it. And you can go ahead and make a pace chart. And we're actually going to go through one real quick here so you can as well too. So let's dive in and let's go into how to do that.
All right, so this is Joe from the future here, and we have good news. They just came out with the Kodiak 100 miler course. So we're actually going to use that as the actual example of what we're doing here when we're creating our pace chart. Now, the website, as I mentioned before, to use to create a pace chart is ultrapacer.com. It's completely for free. It's a great resource. It's super, super awesome. And what you can do is create your pace chart so you can see your timing between each aid station stop. So what I did was, and what you can do, by the way, is you can go into your plan and you can say, hey, I want to have a certain elapsed time, or I want to go a certain average pace. Or if you're unsure of what the actual pace can be, you can say, hey, what's my normalized pace? And it will smooth it out based on elevation gain of the course. You can put in aid station delays in terms of how long you're going to be per aid station as well too. You can say how much you want to have a positive split, or if you dare, a negative split, if you're really going for it out there too. And then you can say things like heat factor, aka how hot it might be and how much heat might affect you on the day. And then obviously you can create different plans and such from there too. Now, just to kind of give you an example of how I'm kind of looking at this, for Kodiak, my biggest thing is my goal is 19 hours because I believe on this course, 19 hours is going to get you in the top 10. So I have 19 hours as my planning. I have about a 2-minute aid station delay, so I don't plan to be at any aid station for more than 2 minutes. My plan is to be as efficient as possible, so I'm baking that in there too. I plan pacing-wise to probably have about like a 10% positive split on there too, which is usually like about normal for like a pretty decently well-run race. So that just means that the back half of the race from an effort perspective, or not effort perspective, from a pacing perspective is going to be a little slower than the first half, which is usually the case in a lot of these ultra marathons. For heat factors, I'm going to say 5%. Really, the high on this race is probably going to be maybe 60 degrees. However, it is at altitude. The course is very exposed. There's not a lot of shade, so the heat will definitely affect me out there for sure. So I put a heat factor of 5% out there. Now, just a heads up, there's maximum heat factor and baseline. Maximum is heat factor at the peak of the day. Baseline heat factor is throughout the whole event. Now, for Kodiak, a lot of the race is at nighttime because it does start at 1 p.m. And it does get very cold here in Big Bear Lake. So when I say here, yes, Joe from the future, we're in Big Bear right now doing a training camp. But anyways, it is not going to be heat at the nighttime, so we're putting it at 0. If you're doing races like Badwater 135, Keys 100, any race where it is going to be hot at nighttime, you definitely want to put that baseline heat factor in there as well. And then you can name your plan as well, and you can click go, and then it's all going to come through like this. So as you can see, it tells you how long you're going to be in terms of time between each aid station. So for example, from Green Valley to Crab Flats, estimated to take about 44 minutes, and my average pace about 8:58. So the reason why this is so cool is as you're planning this thing, you can go through and say, so let's just say, for example, I go through here and, I think the first drop bag actually might be at Camp Whittle, I believe. So if I'm looking at that, that means I'm going to have 1 hour, 45 minutes, hour 45, a little over 3 hours, 3:15, until I get to Camp Whittle. So I'll probably need to pack 3 hours and 15 minutes of nutrition with me, because I am not going to use as many stuff at the aid stations, and I want to make sure to have the gels on me. And in between each of these aid stations, like for example, for this 1 hour, I might only need to carry 1 liter because I'll take a liter an hour with me. And this section, 1 liter. This section I might want to do 1.5, and so on and so forth. So you can plan your water between each of these. Like Sugarloaf, very long section, a lot of climbing as you can see here. So I want to plan for a little bit more nutrition, a little bit more things as well too. So this can help to plan out logistics. And you can also share this with your crew, so they can go in and see those things as well too. And you can tweak different things, like you can add specific aid station delays. You can even add some notes, for example, like you can go into like Camp Whittle here and you can say drop bag here, so that when you put it in there, you'll see the notes directly in there as well too, which is super, super nice. And then, yeah, this is a really great way to make that pace chart as well too, which is super nice. And by the way, the coolest thing is it does account for your finish time, and makes you, have slower paces up hills, faster paces down hills as well too, where you can go through and do that. So yeah, give that a try. And now we're going to pop back to the video.
All right, so now that we have our pace plan, then we're going to go on to the second thing, which is going to be on our checklist, which is making sure that you have the right gear to go out and crush this ultra marathon, because gear is super, super important, especially the longer distance that you race, and having that dialed in is huge, especially if you need to buy stuff before the race, because we all know sometimes we need to go on to the interwebs and go buy a bunch of stuff. So let's go through what we need to do to go through our gear. All right, gear for your race. Now, the first and most important thing to do is some races do require a mandatory gear kit for you to race your race. Now, for me, for Kodiak 100 miler, there is a mandatory gear list, which if you haven't seen that, you should go to your race website, whether they have a race packet, website, anything, and see if they have a required gear list, because you 100% need to make sure that you have all that gear. Now, here's a little bit of a pro tip, and this is something that you can use in your training, that you should be doing in your training beforehand as well too, is if there is a required gear list, making sure that you are doing your long runs with the required gear packed in your bag. Because if you do that, then you know exactly how your pack's going to feel out there, how it's going to be packed, and you're going to be carrying it anyway, so it's good to practice that. And some of these races, they have a lot of required gear. So that means that there's going to probably be a lot of weight in your pack, and you want to get used to the weight in the pack too. So there's a little bit of pro tip. Make sure that you have the mandatory gear. I know the mandatory gear for Kodiak has things like a jacket, mandatory food supply, battery packs, headlamps, all that kind of stuff. So you need to make sure you have all that stuff on you at all times. And I need to make sure I have all that stuff with me as well too. So what are the things that I think are essential when it comes to gear that everybody needs to be thinking about for sure? Well, the first thing is shoes. That's probably the most important thing. For me, for Kodiak 100 miler, I'm wearing the Nike Ultrafly. Now, this is a carbon-plated trail shoe, and I did put out a podcast episode recently that said that carbon-plated trail shoes are a little bit overrated. Do you have to wear them? No. I like to wear them because I do think that they feel a little bit more fast out there. They feel a little bit more poppy out there. But the reason why I say they're overrated is because you don't necessarily need them. If you are racing a 100 miler or any distance that you're going for, you don't need the carbon plated shoes. They're definitely a nice to have. I like to spend a little bit more extra money and have them. So that's why I'm going with the Nike Ultrafly. Now, here's the thing. I'm only going to be wearing one pair of shoes through the entire time. Now, some people, they do want to change shoes or anything of such too. So with that as well too, I usually like to say, if you are someone who tends to get a little bit more sore feet in these races, maybe change your shoes every 40 to 50 miles. And the reason for that is because if you zoom into the foam on shoes, they actually are like, looks like a sponge with little perforations. And over the course of 40 to 50 miles, the perforations are going to basically close up a lot. And after 50 miles, the foam becomes a little compromised because those holes do not expand back. And therefore, the foam isn't poppy. And here's the catch. It'll take about 30 hours for that foam to go back to normal. So if you do get sore feet in an ultra, or I would suggest if you're doing a race that's the longest you've ever gone, probably switch your shoes out about 40 to 50 miles or so. Now, the reason why I'm not is because usually for 100 miles, I tend to not get sore feet. So I will usually be good with one pair of shoes throughout the entire time. And I plan to be just going really quick through these aid stations. So I'm going to have, one shoe basically the entire race as well, which would be the Nike Ultrafly. And here's the thing too, test out your shoes as much as possible when it comes to racing in these ultra marathons. Whatever shoe that you're going to be going for, make sure that you have put in a lot of training miles, that you've done a lot of your long runs with it. You do not want to go into a race with a new shoe at all. You want to be sure that this is tried and true and tested throughout the entire time as well. Okay, so that is shoes. Now, the next thing is clothing. Now, clothing is very, very important. And here's a big tip that I see a lot of people mess up really, really often when it comes to these races, is sometimes you're going to have weather that is a little bit on the extreme side, whether it's really hot. But here's the one that screws people up. If it is cold or rainy, if there is any chance of cold or rain in your race, you want to make sure that you have good gear. You want to make sure that you have warm gear, and you want to make sure you have enough gear that you can use so it doesn't become super wet or super cold or super sweaty, so you can avoid getting things like hypothermia, feeling like you are getting way too cold out there. This is something that you want to make sure that you have first. So the first thing I'm just going to say before I dive into all the other stuff is if there's any chance of rain. Now, at Kodiak, there could be potential chance of rain. And also, too, they require you to have a rain jacket. I think getting a really good rain jacket is worth the money. Now, there's some things where I don't think you need to spend a crap ton of money on because I do think that there's some stuff are a little unnecessary. But a rain jacket, you need to spend good money on because you need something that needs going to get you keep you very dry. You need something that's going to keep you warm, and you need something that's going to also dry out really, really quickly. For me, my favorite rain jacket of all time is the John G Rain Runner Pack Jacket. This thing's amazing. It is really, really good rated for waterproof. It's super comfortable. It's super light. It's very breathable as well too. It's got some like breathing slits in there as well. But I love this thing because it's a great rain jacket. It keeps me warm even when it's not rainy and I just want to have a wind shell on. But most importantly, I've worn this in rainy races before or rainy long runs, and this thing keeps me dry. So the John G Rain Runner Pack Jacket is one of my favorites, and so I'm going to be taking this in my required gear kit out there, and probably will wear it during the nighttime. I mean, Kodiak starts at 1 p.m., so it's an afternoon race, so a lot of the race is actually going to be at night, and we are in the mountains. We go up to 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 feet, so it will be chilly. So I guarantee that I will probably be wearing this at some point out there as well too. So I have this in my pack. Make sure you invest in a good rain jacket. Do not skimp on that. And have multiple rain jackets. Like I will have crew out there, so I'll have multiple rain jackets with them that I can swap out in case, one gets super sweaty or anything, because that's something that you want to keep in mind out there too. Now, in terms of the clothing, again, make sure you're wearing clothing that is going to, or that you have done in training before. Don't go in with new clothing. I'm going to wear the John G All Day Run Tee. I'm actually going to be wearing a white one out there. It's just currently in the wash, so I don't have it here. So I'm going to be wearing the John G All Day Run Tee, this is what it is. It's super breathable, super, super cool when it gets hot because even though, like I said before, it's going to get cold at night time, Kodiak can get a little hot out there too, especially with the 1 p.m. start. So I want something breathable and nice. And I'll be switching in a few different variations of this. Another pro tip on this is if you have a race that you're going to be at the nighttime or it's going to swing in temperature fluctuations, change your shirt before you go into the nighttime. Here's the reason why. It's a big mistake I see people make. And even if you look at Jim Walmsley, look at the documentary Walmsley, where it documents his journey at UTMB. Anytime he goes from daytime to nighttime to nighttime to daytime, he's always changing his shirts. And one of the reasons for that is because people will wear a shirt all day, they'll get it super sweaty, and then they'll go into the nighttime, and if they don't change it, now you're cold, and now you can get things like hypothermia or your body temperature is not going to regulate as much. So I'm going to be changing my shirt going into every nighttime section, and then going from night to daytime, I'm going to be switching my shirt again. So I'm going to have 3 different variations of these out here too. And here's the thing too. If you have drop bag or crew space to pack more stuff. God forbid you get caught in a rainstorm and then all of a sudden, like now your extra shirt is like totally wet and you don't have any dry clothes. You could be screwed out there. So I'll be wearing 3 different shirts of these, but I will be packing probably 4 or 5 just in case, things get a little squirrely with the weather. And of course you can always check the night before and everything. But I always say this, better to be safe than sorry. Pack more things with your crew and drop bag if you can, just so you have it on hand. So that's what I'm going to wear there. Shorts wise, I'm going to be wearing the John G 2-in-1 compression liner shorts. These are my favorite shorts of all time. They have a nice compression liner in here as well too, better than like the mesh liner. I just find that the mesh liner just chafes like crazy, and I hate chafing, so the compression liner is super nice. And I'll be packing 2 pairs of these, and TBD if I change it. Now, the reason why I don't really like to change the shorts versus the shirt is because, well, sometimes it's not always plausible to get naked time in these races. But all that being said too, most of the time you want your torso to be the thing that's going to be a little bit more warm because that's where a lot of your heat's going to be. Usually in the nether regions and everything as such too, it's not going to be a heat generating source, so you can be a little bit more lenient with that. But just in case, I will be packing an extra ones of these just in case in there as well too. So those are the general clothes I'm going to be wearing. So you definitely want to make sure that you have your clothes kit and make sure that you're wearing your gear kit on your long runs to test that it's super comfortable. Watch. I use the Coros Vertex 2. Make sure that you have a watch that is going to last you the entire battery life of the race that you are going for, or just have a plan to charge it just in case, whether it's at an aid station or anything as such too. The Vertex 2 lasts, I think, up to like 50-something hours with GPS, so I should be good at Kodiak with this as well too. So make sure you have a watch. Pro tip is get the GPX file of the race that you are racing, so basically the course map, and you can load it onto your watch and make sure that it's on and navigation is on when you are running. Now, you're not using this simply for navigation. What I do suggest to do is get that same map and load it onto your phone and use an app called Gaia, where if you're going to use your phone for navigation, that's the way to do it because it's going to be easier to see on your phone. But you can also load it onto your watch, because this is a race saving tip that I wish that I knew, that has helped me many times in the middle of races, is that if you have navigation mode on your watch, whether it's Coros, Garmin, or any other watch, it will beep at you if you get off course. So there's been many a times where I've like taken a turn, haven't even been looking at my watch or anything like that too, or a navigational thing, and all of a sudden the watch will start beeping me, telling me I'm off course, and then I realize, oh crap, I'm off course. So basically it's a good way to have like a fail-safe in case you go off course. So make sure that you go to your manufacturer of the watch you have and look up how to load a GPX file onto your watch, and then also how to set up navigation mode so that you can be in a place where you make sure that if you go off a wrong turn, that you don't end up going miles and miles and miles off course before realizing that could cost you your race. Usually it'll beep at you if you're like anywhere, like just barely off course, so that way, you can be notified when you get out there. And then if you're ever unsure in the middle of the race, that's where you can pull up your phone and use Gaia to check that you are on track as well too. So making sure that you have that is super, super important. So anyways, that's a little bit of a tangent, but pick a watch that's going to either last you the whole time, or you have a charging plan on there, and one that's going to be reliable out there for sure. And for me, that's been the Vertex 2. I've been using this for years and years and years, and it's a great watch for sure. And now let's talk about the most important thing that I would say from a gear perspective, besides shoes. I would say shoes is the most important, but using whatever pack setup that you're going to have. So please excuse all my salt and debris on here too. This thing needs to go in the wash, but picking your pack for a race is very, very important. And I always say whenever you're going into a race, you want to make sure that you have a pack that is A, going to carry enough stuff between aid stations for you, B is going to be very comfortable, and C is going to be one where you can easily access things that you need out there too. Now, this is why, one of the many reasons why I said start with a pace plan, because if you can look to see between the time between each aid station that you're going to need out there in order to take care of stuff, right? So like if you're doing a race like Moab 240, you might be anywhere between 4 to 5 hours between each aid station. So wearing a running belt probably isn't a smart move. Or wearing a pack with less storage might not be the smart move, and you want to go with a pack with a lot more storage. Now, for me, although we don't have the course yet, what I can kind of tell from past years at Kodiak is there's not going to be that many very long places between aid stations. So in some races like that, where Javelin 100, like I raced that race 3 times, I've always worn a running belt, because at that race, you don't go more than 6 miles between each aid station, and there's not a lot of elevation gain, so you don't have to carry as much stuff, and I like to go a little bit lighter. Now, for here, though, because you're in the mountains, because I might need to carry a little bit more warm gear with me, because I don't see crew until mile 30-something, where, I might need to be carrying a lot of nutrition out there, I'm actually going to go with a pack, and I'm going to wear the Ultraspire Alpha 6 vest. This is one of my favorite vests on the market. It's very lightweight. It can carry a decent amount of stuff, but if you don't carry a lot of stuff in there, it can still be pretty light as well too. So this will be the pack that I'm doing. One thing that I am doing, I'm going to be doing pack swaps. So basically, at each time I see my crew, I'm just going to drop my pack, and then they're going to have my next pack fully loaded. It's going to be the same exact pack. So then that way I can reduce transition. So that's something that you can do as well. If you don't want to do 2 packs on there, because I know it can get a little expensive, then you can still use 1 pack and then just have your crew replenish and restock it from there. But I will be using this as my pack of choice out there. And I will be using bottles as well. So I'll be using like the Hydro Pack flasks. So I'll be using, these, which would be great. And I plan to carry anywhere between 1 liter to 1.5 liters with me at a time. I can't imagine that I'm going to be needing more than 1.5 liters per kind of stop. But if I do, I will carry 2 liters out there just in case. Again, it's all going to depend on, what the final course is. But what in terms of water capacity for you that you need to make sure of, you need to make sure that you have enough water capacity per each aid station stop. And again, look at your pace chart. Like we'll go through this with nutrition hydration planning out too, but we're just talking this in terms of like specific capacity, in terms of how many soft flasks, bladders, things that you need out there too. You want to look at your pace chart and say, okay, if I'm going to be drinking about 1 liter an hour and the longest aid station stop that I have is 2 liters, you want to make sure that you have, I would say, at least 2.5 liters of capacity with you. You always want to make sure you have half a liter higher, just in case it's a little hotter out there, just in case you drink a little bit more, and just in case something happens, right? A bottle leaks or anything like that such, that you do have a little bit more than enough too. So look at that pace chart and find the capacity. For me, yeah, I will change this based if like the course changes, but I can't anticipate that I'm going to need more than 2 liters between each aid station. So I'll be packing 2 liters of capacity, which will be coming within 4 bottles of these. I'll have 2 in the front, and then already you can see I have 2 in the back, in this back pouch in here as well too, that I will be carrying with me on the go too. Some other things that you just want to also just need from a gear check perspective too is you're going to want to have socks for sure. For me, I'm going to wear the Darn Tough socks. I love those. But you're going to want to have at least, if you have feet problems in the past, at least 1 pair of socks for every 6 hours you're going to be out there. Now, I generally don't get a lot of feet issues, so I will only be carrying maybe 2 or 3, and I will only change as needed. But I usually suggest for most people, if you have feet issues in the past or you tend to get blisters a lot, change your socks every 4 to 6 hours or so, and make sure you're using things like Tom's 2 Shield Blister Shield Powder, which is something that you can put in your socks that is going to take away the moisture. Or if you're out on a very wet or humid race, use something like Salty Britches Skin Barrier Ointment to ointment over your feet, and that way you can prevent friction, and that's going to help your feet to be a little bit more waterproof out there to prevent blisters as well too. Make sure you have a blister kit as well too, just in case. Again, I don't anticipate me getting blisters, but I will have my crew have a blister kit just in case, extra socks and shoes and stuff. Again, if you've done like 100 miles before and you haven't gotten blisters and you haven't changed your socks or shoes a lot, like for example, I did Javelina 3 years in a row. I did Zion 100 miler, and I've never gotten blisters at those races, and I didn't change my socks for any of those. You know, again, if it's the first of a distance, like a 200-mile race, like the first time I did Cocodona, even though I never got blisters at 100 miles, I did change my socks a lot. And lo and behold, I did get blisters. I've gotten blisters at every 200-plus mile race because it is a 200-miler. And in those cases, I will change my socks to be a little bit more preventative. But for here, I'm going to take a little bit more risk too. So as you can see too, a common theme on this video is the more that you race these distances, the more you can get dialed in on what gear strategy is going to be best for you based on your style and preferences and how your body responds. And that's going to allow you to really nail down the stuff too. So those are some things gear-wise that I'm using a Kodiak. And then headlamp. I don't have my headlamp here too because it's currently charging. But the headlamp that I'm going to be using is the Phoenix running headlamp. That is the best. I have an extra battery pack just in case that thing dies. It should last me the whole night section, but as you saw in the Arizona Monster documentary, headlamps can die and break out there, and you don't want to be left with a phone light out there. I've done it before. It's not great. So I do have extra batteries just in case for that one as well too. So I will be using that headlamp out there. Also, I'll be equipping my Pacers with the Ultraspire Wastelight 850 lumen waist lamp. I'm not going to be wearing it. I'm going to have my Pacers wear it just because if they're going to be in the nighttime section, that is, just so they can light up the trail out there with me too. So all that being said, those are the gear lists on there too. There's plenty more gear things that you might need on there too as well, which is always why I suggest to kind of put those things down. But those are the essentials: good lighting, good pack, good shoes, making sure you got more than enough clothes, making sure that you got a foot care plan. Also lube. My lube of choice that I like to use is Body Glide. Make sure that you're lubing up as much as possibly can out there so you don't get chafing. Chafing sucks. If it's going to be a sunny race, sunglasses, sunscreen, also some good things to have. Ice bandana. TBD if I'm going to be using an ice bandana out there. I mean, the temperatures could be maybe only 50 to 60 degrees, which in that case, probably don't need one. If it's a hotter race, you might want one as well too. I should say you're going to need one. So those are some other pieces of gear that you can have in there too. But make sure you have a good gear checklist as well, and you'll be dialed in for the race. Hey, real quick, if you're training your butt off for your next ultra marathon and you're not seeing results or hitting a plateau, we would love to help you crush your goals and help you make new progress in your training through our Everyday Ultra coaching services. So if you want to work with us, you can book a free consultation call to see if we'd be a good fit, because we want to help you make progress in your ultra training, even if you're hitting a plateau, to hit new heights. So book a call at theeverydayultra.com or in the link below, and we'd love to chat with you. All right, back to the video. All right, so the next thing to plan for your race, and this is one of the most important things and probably the most tedious and one that can probably be a little bit more of a mental kind of crunch, but nonetheless, it's one of the most important things because it is the thing that causes the most DNFs in ultra marathons, and that is nutrition and hydration, and making sure all that stuff is planned out in detail before you go out and race there too. So the first and foremost thing is this is something that you should be training in your overall training to begin with. You should be practicing a fueling plan. You should be practicing a hydration plan. You should be practicing what kind of stuff to have in there too, which just some baseline tips on here too. Just real quick, if you haven't been training this already, from a carbohydrate perspective, you want to aim to get anywhere between 50 to 120 grams of carbohydrates per hour. Now, if you are on the lower end of that, start on the lower end and work your way up, but making sure you're doing that and practicing that on an hourly basis. Secondly, make sure that you run a sweat test to make sure how much hydration that you need out there too. If you're running a little bit more in-depth tips, I would go to this video, which shows all the knowledge that I learned 8 years in ultramarathon training, where I actually go do how to really dial in a nutrition hydration plan there too. So give it a watch too. But you want to make sure that you have a hydration plan as well too, and that you're practicing those things and what you need out there. And then also, again, making sure that you have a fueling plan and what you're going to eat out there too. Once you have your fueling plan in place, let's just say, let's just go for my example here. So for me, I get in about 100 grams of carbohydrates an hour for a 100-mile race. And so I know that I know that in temperatures about Kodiak, I will tend to take in about 750 milliliters of water, so a little less than a liter an hour. And from a sodium perspective, I'm probably going to have about 400 milligrams of sodium an hour in terms of that 750 milliliters. Now at nighttime, I'm going to drink a little less. I'll take in a less sodium proportionally, but I know those are my numbers. Now, again, we're going to go back to that pace chart that we made, because this is why we started on that, because I'm going to look at that pace chart and I'm going to say, okay, how much time between each aid station I'm going to have? And based on that time, how much nutrition am I going to need? And how much water am I going to need? And how much sodium I'm going to need? And then I plan things out accordingly from there. The first and foremost thing that you want to do, is before you even look at in terms of the aid stations and stuff, you want to plan out all your nutrition hour by hour of what you are going to have. And I tend to always suggest athletes to look at it in terms of 2-hour blocks in what you're going to have in a 2-hour period, because it kind of makes it a little easy and you can have some variety in there. So for me, here is my plan of what I'm going to be using on a 2-hour basis. So I have more of the things spread out too, but I'm actually let's just shift this around a bit. And I'm going to show this because this is going to be my 2-hour fueling plan at Kodiak here too. So hour one, I'm going to take in two never second gels, which is about 60 grams of carbs and 400 milligrams of sodium. And then I'm also going to take an SIS beta fuel gel, which is about 40 grams of carbs. So in there is 100 grams of carbs and it's going to be 400 milligrams of sodium, which gets me exactly where I need to be as well too. Now, in the second hour, I'm going to do a never second gel, 30 grams of carbs, 200 milligrams of sodium. I'll be doing a SIS beta fuel gel with electrolytes, which is 200 milligrams of sodium on there. And then I'm also going to have a Precision Fuel 30-gram gel with 100 milligrams of caffeine. And I'm going to rinse and repeat that cycle for 2 hours. As you can see, I have it all mapped out here too. And so basically what you want to do beforehand is take your estimated time for the race and bag things out like this as well too. And basically go through and have your hour by hour fueling plan all laid out so you have that visually, and making sure you have enough gels and everything as such too. Now, I always suggest always pack some extra stuff too. I will be packing a bin full of extra gels, like extra caffeine gels, extra never second gels, even gels that aren't a part of my standard plan. So as you can see here, I have the regular SIS gel. I got some goo gels in here as well too, that I have just in case I want to pack or I want something else. I even have candy just in case I might want to switch to candy throughout. So I have some extras in there too, but you at least want to have your baseline nutrition planned out as well too. The other thing that I also really suggest is get used to the nutrition that's going to be on course. For example, for Kodiak 100 miler, NAC is the main nutrition provider. So I do sprinkle in some NAC on there too. Now, word of the wise onto this, I say get used to the nutrition out there and try it out as a backup. And you can also use it as potential options to, go through and restock in case you have long crew stops where you're not going to see crew, or long stops without drop bags and you don't want to take in a bunch of gels for you. But heed the word of warning here. There are many times in races where I've seen that they have stock nutrition that ends up going out, whether it's gels, drink mix, things like that too. I would say I always recommend people bring their stuff or have stuff with drop bags or crews just in case. Do not rely fully on the aid stations because you don't want to be in a situation where you're relying on the aid station and they don't have it there and you're screwed. Now for me, I know I do well at NAC Ultra Energy Drink Mix. They will have this on the course. And assuming that they don't run out, I will use that as a backup option or supplemental carbohydrates if I need to out there. So for example, if I still feel like with 100 grams of carbs, I might want a little bit more carbs to top it off a little bit, which sometimes is the case on my end. I will be using the NAC Ultra Energy Drink Mix that will be out there too. And I do well with the NAC gels and things like that too, so I'll use those as supplement just in case. But don't fully plan on the aid stations. Don't fully rely on them because you might be SOL if you get to a place and they're all out, and then your whole nutrition plan's screwed. So make sure you have everything bagged out. Now, once you have everything bagged out, then you're going to go back to your plan and you're going to look at, okay, where are my crew stops and where are my drop bag stops? And if you don't have crew, then you're going to be looking at the drop bag stops for sure. And if there's no drop bags, then you're going to need to think about, okay, how do I carry all this stuff with me, right? Again, I don't have the Kodiak course, but let's just make a hypothetical example here. Let's just say I can get my first drop bag at mile 20, and I plan to go those 20 miles at, let's just go 5 hours, right? So I can do one of two options, which I would prefer the first option, which is just bring 5 hours of nutrition with me. So if I look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can just go ahead and just take all these gels with me and I'll be good for the 5 hours. Now, option 2 is I could take maybe 3 hours and then re-up at the aid station. But again, be very word of like caution. There might not be there in the beginning. So I would say suggest to take some, or you can kind of do a mix and match of a few. At the worst case, they're probably going to have something at the aid stations, so you could take something, but why gamble with your nutrition, especially if it's the most important thing? Make sure you have all your nutrition kind of planned out as well too. So let's just say the first drop bag stop is 5 hours, so I'm going to take 5 hours of nutrition with me. Now, let's just say that this is the first drop bag spot, but there's 3 aid stations along the way. One of them I'm going to hit in an hour, the other one I'm going to hit in an hour and a half, and then the other one I'm going to hit in another hour and a half. So that means at most, I need to carry at least 1.5 hours of water capacity with me. Now let's go back to my numbers, 750 milliliters. If we're doing 750 times 1.5, that's going to be about 1.25 liters. And so with that, I need to make sure that I'm going to take 1.5 liters just to be a little bit more cautious. So I need at all times to make sure that I have 2 soft flasks and 1 additional soft flask as well, which is going to be 1.5 liters, and making sure I have them all accounted for, filled with water. So at that standpoint, that's what I'm going to carry with me water-wise, and make sure to fill those up at the aid stations to make sure I have that water capacity on there. Now, there might be some sections where you might need more water capacity, whether it's a hotter section, longer section without water refills, anything as such too. Pro tip, you can also use a filter. I like the HydroPack cap filter, which you can get, which screws very nicely onto most soft flasks. And literally you can just scoop water up and then just put it on there. Now, word of the wise, if you plan to use that as a part of your water calculation, A, make sure there's running water on that section, and B, make sure you have the filter with you, and C, make sure you have enough water capacity to help you do that. But that's an option that I have done without carrying a bunch of water if I know there's going to be water on the course. But making sure that you have your hydration plan down is pivotal. And that way you can go through and basically make sure you have enough water along with the food that you need out there as well too. Big word of the wise too, I will say this, right? I have all this nutrition plan, but there is a chance, and there's always a chance that I might say, hey, never second gels, they sound kind of gross to me right now. Or hey, maybe this like citrus flavor isn't doing it for me. I only like the passion fruit. That's why you have a bunch of extra stuff with you, just in case you need to swap things out. And so in your planning sheet that you have too, what I usually like to put for my crew, or even yourself that you can put as a mental note to have if you print this out, put it on your phone or whatever, is put a list of foods or gels that you know that you like that aren't a part of your standard plan, so that if all of a sudden never second gels become gross to you, you can say, oh, well, you know what? I can also take down UCAN gels really, really well. So I'm going to go through and take some UCANs with me and substitute it with the never seconds, right? Therefore, you have an additional option. Or maybe gels just aren't doing it for you and you need some real food. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to put in Nerds gummy clusters on here, right? So there's a bunch of different alternative options, but always make sure you have backups. That's the thing that really screws people up, is they don't have backups. And chances are, I mean, for most people, you're probably not going to like the things that you're having for a long period of time. I know for me, I generally don't get a lot of palate fatigue. Like I can probably go the entire race just taking this, but maybe not. And so that's why I always like to pack some extra stuff. And that's why a big suggestion that I always have for people practicing their nutrition plan is try as many stuff as possible in your nutrition training, because you can get more options on there. Because the classic adage is nothing new on race day, especially when it comes to nutrition, because you can mess up your stomach and ruin your race. Now, biggest caveat though, people hear the nothing new on race day. Here's what I always say. If everything that you've tried before doesn't work, then it's okay to try something new, because it's way better to try something new and risk something than to not try anything at all. Because if you don't try anything at all and you just go without fuel, you're guaranteed to blow up, or you're guaranteed to probably have a worse outcome. Whereas like if you just try maybe Nerds gummy clusters and you haven't tried them before, but it's the only thing that might work out as well, which by the way, these are amazing, they're so good. You'll be in a position where, you know, you can at least give yourself a chance to get some carbohydrates out there and get some stuff going too. So plan out your nutrition. I usually like to visually lay it all out, or I'll like to go into the sheet and say, okay, at this section, I need 6 gels and I need 2 salt flasks. At this section, I need this, this, and this, and therefore make it have it all laid out and plan it accordingly from there too. So that's the thing, planning out your nutrition, making sure you're doing that, making sure you have all the numbers, everything as such too. You know, what I did too, I put in a massive order online as well too. So I got enough gels and everything. You want to make sure that you're ordering enough, just because you don't want to be in a situation where you're just scrambling at last minute to try and get those precious gels that you really, really like out there. And then you don't have them, right? That sucks. So all that being said, that's how you plan your nutrition hydration, which is a very pivotal step. So the next thing in your planning phase is planning your crew or drop bag strategy for your race. Now, a drop bag is a designated bag that you can put in with gear, nutrition, anything you might need out there that the race is going to drop for you at specific aid stations. And a crew is basically a team of people, whether they're your friends, family, anyone of the such too, who are out there being like your pick crew, like helping you to restock on nutrition, hydration, changing your socks. Like they are there to support you, and also maybe lug your gear around from aid station to aid station, whatever that might be too. But those are what crew and drop bags are out there in the race as well. Some races don't allow crew and some races don't allow drop bags. So you always want to make sure to see, does my race have crew drop bag access, and what does that look like out there too? Now for shorter distances like 50Ks, you might not get a drop bag or crew access. So something to kind of keep in mind with that. Usually most ultra marathons will have at least a drop bag option, but you always want to make sure what the rules are on that to make sure that you are planning accordingly. Now, if you're running an ultra marathon and there's no crew or drop bags out there, then this won't apply to you as well. But more likely than not, you will have one of these options out there too. So the first thing I'm going to start with is drop bags, because you might do a race even if they have crew access and you might not have a crew out there. Do you need a crew? No, you don't absolutely need a crew at all. I've done a 100 miler, my very first 100 miler, I did with no crew or no pacers. I just did it with drop bags. So first and foremost, I want to say, you do not need a crew to race an ultramarathon if there's crew access. So don't be stressing if you can't find people to crew you. I don't think that's a requirement out there. It's definitely a nice to have, because it kind of takes a little bit more of the thinking off your plate, takes a little bit more of the logistical stuff. They can carry a lot more stuff from aid station to aid station than what you can usually put into a drop bag. So there's a lot of benefits to it, but is it required? No. Like I said before, I did my first 100 miler without crew and was totally fine, finished the race, did it in under 24 hours, which was my goal. So it is all possible. But you really need to make sure that you have your drop bags dialed in, which is where we're going to start. Now, first and foremost, you want to make sure that you have a good type of drop bag. Now, for me, I always say if you go to Amazon.com and just get any type of dry bags out there, they're great. So the dry bags are kind of like those roll-up bags. I would bring them now. They're just all packed away in the chaos of our garage. But all that being said, there were those bags that basically you can like roll up, and they're really, really nice. And the reason why they're called dry bags is because if it rains outside, or if there's things like dew in the morning due to humidity or anything as such too, nothing in the bag is going to get like soaking wet. Now, I always say too, if there's something in there that can't get wet, make sure to either Ziploc bag it or double bag it just in case. But God forbid something happens, there's torrential downpour, you can at least keep everything in there with a dry bag. I also like to say, get really bright colors as well too, because chances are there's going to be tons of other drop bags and you want to make your drop bag stand out. So those are some drop bag tips. But I would say this, if there's any time that there is a drop bag and there's no crew access, take the drop bag option, because A, you're going to have to carry less stuff with you out there. B, you can make sure to put contingency items in there just in case you need it. And even if you don't need it, at least it's there for insurance. And C, it's going to also make planning things a little bit easier, because then at that standpoint, again, you can just like not have to carry all that crap with you. And you can just go through and adapt to the plan a little bit more accordingly by having some extra stuff out there too. So what I always like to do is I always like to say, okay, where are the places I can have drop bags? And then, again, this is assuming that you are going to use every single drop bag point, which If drop bag is shared with crew access and you plan to have your crew go at that, you probably don't need the drop bag. You can just have like the crew there. But all that being said, you want to look at all the drop bags and say, okay, well, if I have my first drop bag at 20 miles in, then I'm going to take everything with me from 20 miles up to that point, and then everything from that drop bag to the next either drop bag or crew point, depending on what's going to apply to you, that's what you're going to have in that drop bag. So let's just say the next drop bag or crew point after that is 3 hours in terms of time. Then you're going to want to pack 3 hours of nutrition in there, and you want to pack anything that you're going to need that's going to cover that time period from that 3 hour time period. So like, for example, if you need to reapply sunscreen, have sunscreen in there. If you need to reapply lube, have lube in there. If you need to bring extra water capacity during that section, have an extra salt flask in there, right? Put all the stuff in there of what you need on each of that time frame in the middle of that stuff too. I also like to put contingency items in those drop bags just in case as well. So I always like to put in some KT tape or Leuko tape just in case I have any hot spots or blisters that I want to tape up. I always put in some Tylenol, like just in case. Again, I don't recommend anyone default to that, but just in case there's something extreme going on, I put some extra Tylenol in there. I will also put Play On Pain Relief, which is a pain relief spray that I like to use in case my legs are super, super sore. I put those in every single drop bag as well. And I usually like to put in potential extra change of clothes. God forbid that there's something that I do need to change my clothes out there, right? So I'll put those all in there as well too. And then socks, if I plan to change my socks in there as well, right? So those are some contingency items to plan, but everything that you must plan, again, have any nutrition that you're going to need in the next section. If you're going to need extra headlamp batteries or something, if it's during the night section, have those in there too. Extra water capacity if you need to take those for the upcoming sections as well. And then also extra food items that maybe aren't a part of your plan. But again, as if you remember the nutrition hydration section, I talked about having some extras. Maybe you put some extra stuff in there as well too. Now, pro tip, and I actually learned this from Andy Glaze, who Andy Glaze is one of my favorite people in the entire running world. And he does most of these long races just on drop bags, including 200-mile races. He's done Cocodona, he's done Arizona Monster, he's done these races all with drop bags, which these are 200-mile races, very complex. Like, that is really impressive. And one strategy that I saw him do that I thought was so awesome is that inside of those drop bags, he actually prints out a little bit of a list of everything he needs to do in that drop bag, everything that's in there, so that way he doesn't have to think about it. He can just pull it out, see the card, and he's like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do here. And that way you can take a little bit of the thinking off of your plate because you want to save that mental energy more for the race itself. And that way you know exactly what you need to do. So that's what I would do from a drop bag strategy and put it in there as well too, and have that in there too. Now, there are some scenarios. I've seen it happen with other athletes. It's never happened to me personally, but some of the athletes I've coached, I've seen this happen. Drop bags can sometimes not make it to the point where you're at. So just be aware that that is a possibility. So you might want to take in just a little extra nutrition with you going into that drop bag spot. You want to also make sure that maybe you can take in some aid station food. You want to make sure that there is a contingency plan because there has been, it's rare, but there has been instances where I've seen some athletes not have their drop bag make it to that aid station stop. So if that's the case, make sure to plan accordingly. Have some extra nutrition with you. Make sure that there are maybe some contingency plans in place. You can make it an aid station just in case that drop bag doesn't make it to that spot. So something to kind of keep in mind on there too. But that's how you dial in your drop bag strategy and make sure everything's packed. And again, what I like to do is I like to write out everything. Okay, in this drop bag, I need X, X, and X. I review that pace plan to make sure that I have everything according to the times that I need. And then I pack it all in there and I make sure it's all in, signed, sealed, delivered, boom, ready to go and drop the thing too. So that's the drop bags. Now the crew side of things, first and foremost, make sure that you have the people who are going to go out there and crew you. You know, some races do limit the amount of crew members that you can have and some do not. I always like to say you want to have a decent amount of people on the crew. Like I say, at the very minimum, 2 people is very nice. 3 is usually like pretty ideal because you can have people switch on and off and stuff like that. Usually when you get kind of like above the 3, it's like where crew gets a little bit more complex in terms of people and stuff because if you have too many cooks in the kitchen, sometimes it can lead to a little bit of chaos. So I usually like to say 2 to 4 people for a crew is usually best. And I would say this, the longer the distance will probably warrant having more crew members because you can probably have one crew member sleep while the other three work, and so on and so forth. Now, this excludes pacers. That's a whole different kind of conversation too, which we can talk about as well too. But with the crew, you want to make sure that you have 2 to 4 people locked in. The most important thing I say with crew is making sure that you have each person have specific roles of what they need to accomplish. And that way it becomes easier for them to kind of go through and coherently understand what they need to do in the task. And also too, it gives them their one lane that they need to focus on, and it avoids too many people having their hands on one thing and maybe something getting missed. So for example, usually in a crew, I'll have one person take care of reloading my nutrition, hydration, pack stuff. And I'll usually have one person that is just there as like a miscellaneous person saying, hey, like, what do you need? Because sometimes I'll come into an aid station and be like, hey, I need some extra water. Hey, I need some extra nutrition. Hey, I need some tape for my feet because maybe my feet are a little bit jacked. And so that person can focus on doing the miscellaneous things while I have the one person executing on all that stuff. So for me, at my crew at Kodiak, I'm going to have Alyssa Clark, my good friend, and then Jake Jackson, my other good friend, who are going to be out there doing it. And I'll have one of them be that main person to drop the pack, making sure they have all that stuff on there. And then one person being more of a contingency person to kind of get any supplemental stuff in case I need it. So that's how I have it on there too. And then again, if you have more people, you can have other people like have more like stuff too. So you can have one person maybe taking care of your feet, one person taking care of nutrition, hydration, and one person the contingency person. What I always suggest at the very least, you have one person take care of the logistical stuff, and you have one person as a contingency. So you have 2, it's easy. If you have 3 people, then basically you take the logistical stuff and split it up into like more parts, and you still have that like one ad hoc person. And then the more people you go, the more that you split those logistical stuff, and you keep that one contingency person, if that makes sense, on there. So you have that crew on there, and you have their strategies to do that too. Now, the most important thing when it comes to crewing is making sure to be as detailed as possible with the instructions that you have, and make sure to write it down on paper. Write it down on paper and be as detailed as possible. So I'll give you an example. I already talked about the headlamp situation at Arizona Monster, and here's why it happened, because I wasn't as specific as possible when it came to the crewing instructions. So I'll give you an example. When I went to go put my crew instructions together, I said, hey, at this aid station, charge my headlamp. And so what my crew did, they took the headlamp, they charged the headlamp, I did my thing. Right when I was ready to go, they took the headlamp out of the charger and gave it to me. And so when I went up there, the headlamp was dead. Now, whose fault is that? Is that the crew's fault? No, that's my fault. Because what I forgot to put in there is that you need to charge this headlamp for 3 hours, not charge the headlamp for a little bit and then give it to me. And that's on me because I wasn't specific enough. So write everything down in painstaking detail of what you need out there. And here's the other thing I always say. Don't assume that anything is common sense, because someone might have a certain headlamp that maybe only takes 20 minutes to charge, but it's maybe not the common sense that the headlamp that you need is 3 hours to charge, right? So something to kind of keep in mind on there too is document it out. I'm going to show you a real quick example of what it looks like to document things out in detail. So let's just dive in and look real quick.
All right, back here one more time. And for this one, I'm going to show you an example of what I made for the Arizona Monster 300 earlier this year, just because I'm still in the process of making my Kodiak one, and this one's pretty well put together. So as mentioned before, it is super, super important to plan these things out. And as you can see here, what I have planned out are all of my aid stations here, and the miles between each aid station. And then I have my average paces here too. Now I do have an A goal and a B goal on here, as you can see. So like estimated A pace, estimated B pace, estimated A finish, estimated B finish. This is a very complex spreadsheet, but you can make it pretty simple. But all that being said, you can take these numbers and plop it in from Ultrapacer. So then that way you can see it from this standpoint as well too. You can use Ultrapacer as well too. But what I really like for this sheet too is just to have like another thing or something I can hand easily to the crew. And if you need to make any additional notes in here, it can be a little cleaner to kind of see. So like, for example, for this specific race, I do have where drop bags and crew are and where sleep stations are. I have places where I plan to change my shoes, change my socks, water capacity between each aid station, who's going to be pacing me, how much time am I going to stop at each aid station, and then the estimated time to be at each of these aid stations. So this is a lot of the stuff from Ultrapacer that I kind of imported into here to make it a little easier. Or you can just like paste all the comments directly into Ultrapacer and just use it on there too. But where a lot of the meat and potatoes that I kind of want to go into is, for example, here, this is my instructions per crew, for the crew that is. So as you can see, there's a lot of details in here, right? So I say, hey, like, here's what to do coming into the aid station. Here's what I do if I need to sleep. Here's what I do post sleep, or if no sleep, like start here. So as you can see, these details are very, very in depth. And like I said before, the more detail that you have, the better, because that way you can really make sure that people on your crew can have the right directions to give you exactly what you need out there. So be super detailed with all of the instructions that you need for the crew out there. That can really, really help. Now, pro tip, if you're using a drop bag and not having crew, you can create this for yourself and you can print it out and you can put it in your drop bag, which is super, super useful. But having this in a sheet is really, really good. Other things that I have in there too as well is, I have crew info. So like, for example, like where we had an Airbnb, crew and pacers linking up to get to the race, goal for the race, important notes, everything as such too. So all that being said, you have that in there, and then you have driving coordinates to each of these aid stations, all the ones with crew as well, mandatory gear, pacer pickup stuff, right? Like where pacers are going to get picked up and everything, nutrition guidelines. So you want to make sure to like make this thing almost like your guidebook for how you're going to race a race. And again, this is like very complex. There's a lot of information. This is also for a 300-mile race. So if you're doing something like a 50K, 50 mile, probably is not going to be as complex as this, and nor really it shouldn't. So all that being said, this is an example of what a sheet looks like. I'll be making one like this for Kodiak as well. And yeah, let's get back in the video here.
So you want to make sure to be as detailed with the crews and everything that they need on there too. Other things to include in there, I would also include driving instructions, or at least coordinates to every single one of the aid stations that they need, and put it in a spreadsheet as well too for them to access. I would also give them a crew guide if there is a crew guide that is supplied with some races that they have out there too, just to let them know and be read up on there too. And then also to make sure the crew knows what the rules are. Some races rules are a little bit more extreme, like Badwater 135, where like, only 2 people can cross the road to meet the runner at a time and all that such too. Make sure that they're briefed on that. And some rules are a little bit more lax with crew. It just depends on the race. Like some races, they only say, hey, you can only have X amount of crew members go at this one aid station, or at Leadville, only a certain amount of crew members can go and go on the shuttle to the Twin Lakes aid station, right? Make sure that they're well informed of the rules as well, to not only make sure that they're well equipped, but also to prevent you from getting disqualified, right? Something to keep in mind too. So that's the crew side of thing. Now, real quick, pacers. Again, pacers are also something that are not required for a race, but they can help a ton. If your race has pacers, make sure that you are putting them in sections that they can do out there. So for example, if someone who's never run 40 miles before, probably don't put them on a 40-mile section. And also make sure that they're people who are placed in the position that they're going to have their best expertise, right? So for example, if I'm going through with Kodiak 100 miler, like I might go ahead on a lot of mountainous sections and put my good friend Alyssa on there, because she's a beast in the mountains. She's awesome. And not to say like Jake is very strong in the mountains too, but Jake's also very fast. And so like with Jake, I might put him on faster sections, right? So I play to the strengths of my pacers to the sections that they're going to be in there. And that way they're not only going to be their best out there too, but I know that they're going to go out and crush those sections as well too. The other thing with pacers is if you know that you respond better to a certain pacing strategy than others, right? Either pacer in front of you or behind you. You like the pacer to talk, you like the pacer to be quiet, you like the pacer to be motivating, or you like the pacer to just tell funny stories, right? Make sure you communicate that with the pacer ahead of time. Being like, hey, listen, sometimes I like to just be in my head and I don't really like talking, so maybe let's just be a little quiet here, and if you could be a little in front of me, that's great. Or if it's like, hey, listen, I want you to tell every single story in the book. I want you to just like tell me your life story out here just so I can focus on that. But I want you like to the side of me, because I like the pacers like being side by side. Communicate that, right? And if you're unsure, then find out what you want in the race and then communicate that with the pacer. I mean, there's some times where I do mostly like talking when pacers out there, but sometimes I do like to just like be a little bit just kind of working through things in my head. So I have asked pacers like, hey, like I just need to work through some stuff. Is it okay if we just like kind of just move along, just like enjoying the stuff and maybe just not talk for a bit? It's nothing on you. It's just like a personal preference. As long as you communicate it, that's the best thing. And that's the really big antithesis of this with the crew and pacers is communications is key, right? So communication is key when it comes to working with teams, and whether it's relationships, business, anything of such too. Communication is always the breadth of a great relationship. And so with crew and pacers, as long as you have great communication, not just with you and your crew, but also intertwined with the crew as well too. The crew has good ways to communicate with each other. You're going to have a successful crew and pacer strategy. So make sure you have that dialed in for sure. All right, the next thing to prep, and this is one thing that I think is very, very underrated, because I think this is one where we all think we know what to do, but taking the extra time to be intentional about this can totally save your race. And I'll give you an example about this where this really, really clicked for me. So the first year I did Javelina 100, and if you're unfamiliar with Javelina 100, it's 100 miles in the desert, and it's 5 loops around pretty much the same track. And the first year that I did it, loop 3 was so hard for me. It was the hottest part of the race. It's right smack dab in the middle of the race. And it's usually the part where fatigue starts to build. And it's the one before you get your pacer. And so it is the toughest loop for sure. And that first year, loop 3 totally kicked my butt. Now, the second year I went into it, I went through and I did loop 3 again. And that thing kicked my butt once again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, man, that thing was so, so tough. And I did this strategy going into my third year at Javelina, knowing that I wanted to do better, was I actually sat down and I asked myself one question. When I get to loop 3, what is my strategy to mentally get through the hurdles that I've had in the past? And I went through and I formulated a strategy, and I went through this process that I'm going to talk to you about here. And I not only had my best loop 3 that I've had, but I had my best race at a 100-mile distance ever, PRing my time by over an hour, even in hotter temperatures from the years prior as well too. And I truly believe a lot of it had to come down to doing this mental prep, which is prepping your mental strategy for when it gets hard. This is a question that I ask all my athletes before they go into a race, is what are you going to do when it gets hard out there? Now, notice the phrasing of that question, when it gets hard out there, right? Because most times in an ultramarathon, even if you are very experienced, even if you train your butt off, even if you know the course every step of the way, you will face times that are hard and difficult. So one of the reasons why we do it, right? We do it because it is tough. It is hard. We're going to face challenges. We're going to face times where we feel that resistance on there. But the biggest thing that I always say is what's predictable is preventable. I'm not saying that we can prevent the low times. I'm not saying we can prevent the hardships that we're going to face out there. But what we can prevent is those mental stuff or those mental challenges from holding us back. We can prevent us folding whenever it gets really, really tough out there, or we face that resistance mentally in a race that tells us to not keep going, that tells us to slow down, that tells us to do anything less than our best. And if we can prepare for that in advance, that's going to give you the best strategy ever. So the first thing that I always say is come up with a list and come up with different things that say, hey, when I get to this part in the race, what are the things that I'm going to lean on that are going to help me to get through it? So for example, like if you know that in a race at mile 40 or 50, like those are the crux points that always tend to mentally get you. Ask yourself, okay, when I get to mile 40 and 50, what am I going to do to overcome that? Now, to get even more tactical with it, I always like to go through what are the things that tend to lead to those feelings of discomfort. So I'll give you an example. Let's go back to that loop 3 example at Javelina. At loop 3, like the thing that always would come to me is saying, okay, it's really hot outside. My legs are starting to hurt here. This is going to be my third loop without a pacer before my last one. Like, those things you tend to get in my head. Oh, wow, this is hard. This is hurting. This is tough. Like, this is really, really hot outside. Like, my gosh, all these things. And I remember telling myself one thing, that I wasn't going to use that pain as an excuse to stop. I was going to use that pain as motivation to keep going out there. And I told myself that. I said at loop 3, when that pain comes on, like, that's going to be my fuel to push me. And I'm going to keep telling myself that. I'm going to tell myself that, like, this pain is the thing that's going to keep me driving forward. This pain is going to be the thing that keeps me moving strong. This pain is going to be the thing that has me keep pushing out there. And as long as I keep thinking about that, that's going to help me to move strong through that section. And I know in that section too, I'm going to think about all my athletes that I coach out there who are rooting for me, who are tracking me, who are, always just telling me that they look to me as example. And I'm going to use that as fuel, as fire to be like, okay, what example do I want to set in this moment at the point in this race when it starts to get really, really tough, right? I come up with that plan. I also say, what are some key phrases and mantras that always help me to keep going? Like, one big thing that always helps me is saying, hey, easy day. Looking good, feeling good, all to be in Hollywood, like all these like crazy, like cheesy things that fire me up all the time. Like, I think about those things and saying, okay, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this. I always going to say, like, who do I want to be? one more time. That was my mantra at Javelina that year, was one more time, which we did document in a documentary, which is awesome. But all that being said, like I said, okay, when I get to loop 3, I'm going to do all these things. And I wrote down that plan on there. And then here's the thing to put it all together. Like, this is one of the most underrated strategies when it comes to ultramarathon mental prep that not enough people do, but it really, really helps. And this is one thing that, I learned from Tom Evans. I learned from a lot of great ultramarathons, which, by the way, Tom Evans, he just won UTMB. One of the most dialed guys when it comes to the ultramarathon world. And he does this. A lot of other people do that. But it is visualize the moments when it becomes hard and you executing that plan. So, for example, like for Javelina, like what I would do is I would literally sit in this exact spot. I would close my eyes and I would visualize myself going through that third loop. And here's the thing, like, don't just think about it, like really visualize it, like really sit down and like visualize it. Like, how does it feel out there? What's the temperature? What are you seeing? What are the sights? Like, what are the things going through your head? Like, really, really visualize it in depth and really give yourself a conscious effort to put yourself in that moment. And the biggest thing is in those moments, visualize that difficulty coming in, whether it's your legs starting to feel a little heavy, whether it's the heat starting to kick up, whether it's maybe like those mental thoughts coming in. And then here's the biggest thing, visualize yourself getting through that mental block by executing on the plan that you deployed out there. So like for me, I would visualize myself feeling the pain and saying, nope, this is fuel, let's push forward. I would visualize myself saying one more time, looking good, feeling good, ought to be in Hollywood. Like I would visualize myself doing all those things. I would visualize myself thinking about the athletes that were inspiring me along the way. And I would visualize myself running the third loop super strong. Now you might say, Joe, this is cheesy, hokey pokey stuff out here. Like, why am I doing this? Well, it's actually neuroscience and psychology. Because what we know from the brain is that if you sit and visualize something, your brain cannot distinguish whether it's real life or in your mind. And here's the thing that I always say is confidence, when you have confidence for a race, confidence is doing the thing that you say you're going to do. Right? If you look at someone who's really, really good at, let's just say, approaching that cute person and asking them out on dates, it's because they've probably done that many times before. And so they know that they can go ahead and do it. Right? Versus the person who's really nervous on that, they probably haven't done it a lot of times before. And sometimes like you just need to be confident to go out and do it. And the way that you be confident is by doing the thing. Now, if you've never done the thing before, you can trick your brain into think you have done the thing by sitting there and visualizing it because your brain can't tell whether that thing is real life or in your head. So you're literally hacking it by going through and visualizing this thing multiple times. Like if you have never gone through that low point in ultramarathon, you can visualize yourself and you can give yourself the experience so you can gain the confidence to do it. And here's the thing too, skills are bred by repetition. So if you visualize yourself doing that over and over and over and over and over again, you get better at the skill of getting through it just by thinking through it. And I swear to you, this sounds like very like cheesy and just like woo-woo kind of stuff, but and listen, I laughed it off for a while. And then I sat and did it, and that's what allowed me to push through at Javelina. So for me at Kodiak, I know for me, a big thing that always like tends to get me in these very mountainous races, and Kodiak is 17,000 feet of climbing. It's very, very mountainous. It is one of those races that has a lot of climbing. I know like the climbs, like sometimes like I tend to not want to push it a little bit more because like the climbs can be a little bit tougher. It's at elevation. My breathing's out there. But I'm going to say this, like I'm going to visualize myself pushing through. I'm going to visualize myself driving through my glutes, powering through those climbs. I'm going to visualize myself like knowing that I can still keep going strong, even if I'm pushing a little bit harder on these sections. And what I'm going to do is like, there's a climb that goes up to Sugarloaf Mountain, which is the highest mountain in the Big Bear Valley. And I'm going to visualize myself pounding through that mountain. I'm going to visualize myself going up there strong. And the coolest thing is I'm actually going to go out there for a training camp this week. So I'm actually going to go up the mountain and see it, right? And visualize myself and give myself more of a little bit more accurate representation, which by the way, if you can't go out to the course, just type in on YouTube what the course looks like and visualize yourself in the moment on there. But all that being said, being in a position where you can visualize those hard moments is going to be great. And then having that mental plan to what to go through. And here's the biggest thing too. Just like I said with nutrition, how you need to have multiple options in case one thing doesn't work, you need to have multiple mental strategies to get you through the race. And this like clicked with me when I talked with Harvey Lewis, which Harvey Lewis, he once held the world record for most miles ran in a backyard ultra, which was like over 400 miles. This guy's won Badwater 135. He's one of our best ultramarathoners of the time. And I was running with him at an event once, and I asked him, I said, Harvey, like, what did you do when you ran 400 plus miles? And by the way, this is a backyard ultra, so he had to run 4.2 miles on the hour every hour. So it's not like he could like stop. Like he just like kept going for like 400 miles, days and days and days. And I asked him, I was like, what did you do? Like, what was the one thing that you did mentally that helped you get through the race? And he looked over at me and he's like, well, that's the thing, Joe. I didn't just do one thing. He's like, I did 20 things. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, one moment I would just say mantras. And then when the mantras didn't work anymore, I would just start all of a sudden just start cracking jokes and being funny. And then when those jokes didn't work anymore, then I would really channel like more of that like dark side and things like that to like push through and like have that chip on my shoulder. And when that didn't work, I would just focus on micro goals, right? Moving from one aid station to the next. And I was like, oh wow, like that's what the key is. And so here's the big thing is like you might have mantras, you might have, things that inspire you, but try out different mental strategies, right? And different things are going to hit for you in different moments. I would say this too, like, is there moments like where you hear a certain song and you're like, it's not doing for me. But at other moments in life, that same song elicits just a powerful emotional response. That same thing is going to be true with mental strategies. So put through those mental strategies, make sure you have that solid plan in place, visualize yourself executing that. And you do that, you have a bulletproof mental plan to get through any low point in the middle of an ultra marathon so you can crush through those low points. And I always say this too, like fitness doesn't guarantee success. And the reason for that is because I think people crumble mentally. I've been on start lines where people have been days and nights fitter than me. I mean, from a fitness standpoint, VO2 max standpoint, these people are light years ahead of me. And not to say like, that I'm better than them or anything. It's just like, there's been times where I just truly feel like taking the extra steps mentally has allowed me to get ahead. There's been sometimes some people who, maybe they weren't as fit as me, who have maybe done better because they've done a little bit more mental prep, right? So it's gone both ways. And so, of course, mental prep doesn't get, like, you can't just win races or, crush races on mentality alone. Like, you also need to have the fitness, but you can't have fitness and no mentality out there. And so to take the mental prep is just as important as all the other steps that we gone. And that's why I saved it for the last thing here too, because I think this is just so important to go through.